What's going on, ladies and gentlemen and ladies? I'm back for another interview. I mean, you guys have to understand at this point, the people that I interview, I think are incredible individuals, people who inspire me, people who I work with, people who I want to endorse, all of the above. But today I have a really special person. This guy, if you are in the military, or you are a police officer, or if you're love playing paintball, going out with your friends playing paintball wars. I mean, this is a person that you want to hear from. David Luxton. He is the executive chair of Quest. Quest is spelled Kwesst, and it's pronounced like Quest, like the internet company or the cable company. And it is a company that brings to market non-lethal defense technology. You guys have heard me speak about Quest in the intro of my videos. I'm an investor with Quest. I'm the spokesperson of Quest, and I believe in Quest. I advise them on how to bring this particular low energy cartridge to the market. It has an incredible implications for policing in America. I think it's going to revolutionize policing, and I also believe that it can help you make your home defense more dynamic. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in my friend, a person that I've gotten to know over the last several months, David Luxton. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brandon, great to be here. Thank you.
All right, David, you have, like I said before in my little opening statement, you have an incredible history in non-lethal weapons. I think one of the most notable things that you've been able to accomplish, at least early on, is that you helped create the first system of the paintball that people know today, that they go do paintball wars. And you were one of the founders in the technology of creating the first technology of the systems that we see today. Can you explain kind of how that came and where you get the inspiration to create such a thing?
Sure. Well, that first launcher, I have to tell you, it looks like an antique today. At the time, I remember this was before the internet even. So this history is not even available to my knowledge. But at the time, this launcher was a breakthrough, along with a water-soluble paintball projectile. Many listening may not be old enough to remember that the original paintball launcher was a old single shot cattle marking and tree marking gun that held about 10 acrylic, like indelible paintballs. And so this is hardly suitable for paintball, right? For the sport. So it was transformational really at the time when I introduced a rapid fire made for paintball launcher that held 38 paintballs and a projectile that was engineered to be water soluble and therefore easily washable. So that, catalyzed the big part of the development of the whole industry at the time. And the rest, as they say, is history. This is still big business today.
Yeah. And you went on, after developing such a innovative technology that, is all around the world. You went on to create something that I think was probably one of the most invaluable systems that I've experienced in my training in law enforcement. And also all of my friends talk about this, so heavily in the military, and that's the Simunition system. And I'm telling you, we trained with that on the SWAT team every single training session. And the beauty of it is that you can use the handgun, you can use the rifle platform, and you don't die when you get shot with it, but you feel it, so it can correct, poor behaviors and tactics. But can you explain to my audience a little bit about, the thought behind the Simunition rounds and impact and importance that you've seen, how, once it came to market, how the impact has been in the United States and all around the country, or at least all around the world?
Right. Yeah. It was an interesting product, and its effect has been interesting. And we know it's skin ripping good, right? So if you've been hit with it, I always wanted to create a medal called the Purple Hurt. I'll create one and I'll give it to you. But, Simunition is a version of paintball, but it's in real weapons and with real cartridges, reduced energy cartridges. The background is that I was contacted by a counter-terrorist unit that thought this could help them train much more realistically and develop more realistic tactics rather than, shooting blanks. I got you, no, you didn't. And this was for close quarters combat. And that's what they wanted to train for. So not knowing this was theoretically impossible to do, I ended up working with others who were technical geniuses. I hold patents on it, but others smarter than me helped get it developed, helped get it to market. And again, the rest is history. This is now been widely adopted around the world by special forces, by counter-terrorist teams, as you mentioned, police tactical teams, and it remains today the world standard for this kind of realistic training.
Yeah, I think that, I can't find a better solution to training in an environment or a situation as real as using simunition rounds, because the next step is real rounds. And obviously you're not going to have a lot of training sessions if you use a real live fire on other people. So I think it's incredible. I think it's a great invention. Also, going back to the paintball technology, you also, and more recently, was a part of, or at least you led the PepperBall. I think it was you led the PepperBall company. Let me make sure I have my notes right. Yeah, you ran the PepperBall company for several years, and you were responsible for development and introducing new technology. And for people that may not understand what the PepperBall is, it is a system that we used, again, in law enforcement. I'm sure they use it in the military, but in law enforcement, we used it quite often, as a technology where if we were in a position where we had to break out windows, we use certain PepperBall munitions to break windows in order to, defend ourselves from dogs that weren't deadly. We could shoot the PepperBall around a dog. You shoot the PepperBall in the crowds, riot control. We use the PepperBall just as much as any other weapon that we used in law enforcement. So if you could talk to us a little bit about your experience, running PepperBall for several years, and just how you think that applies to technologies today.
Sure. Well, glad you were a happy user of the product. I should just say that the term PepperBall, is sometimes used generically, but it is a registered trademark of United Tactical Systems. That's the company I led for several years, and that makes the PepperBall product, the launchers and the projectiles. So it's an air gun based system, as you would know, much like a paintball gun. The pepper powder inside the PepperBall is a very effective irritant powder, for example, controlling a crowd or a dangerous suspect, animal control, as you mentioned. And it's now in use with hundreds of law enforcement agencies across the U.S. and around the world.
Yeah, the only knock that I had was the fact that it was the airsoft. There were times, and I know that our, it could be the way we maintain it, but trying to fill that thing up with the CO2 and doing those things, sometimes it'll be out. We would know it was out. And I definitely feel like that it was great, but I feel like that, and this is leading me into my next, discussion with you about the non-lethal system that you've been able to create and develop for Quest. A low energy cartridge is what we call it, but the airsoft had its flaws. It wasn't as consistent as it would something like the simunition round. So I think my next question is going to be pertaining to the Quest low cartridge system that we are bringing to market here soon. What's your take on that, and how do you think that benefits law enforcement? And we'll talk a little bit more about personal defense, but how do you think that benefits law enforcement and the technology that you've been able to develop?
Right. Well, let me just go back into my history with all these products and being in front of so many agencies and customers around the world over many, many years, and really in over 100 countries. This gave me really a very deep understanding of the various kinds of challenges they face in what's called non-lethal applications. And there are many types of non-lethal missions, whether it's riot control or subjugation of dangerous suspects, or realistic force-on-force training, or personal defense that you mentioned, animal control, and even high-action gaming or simulated combat. So I've heard it all from the end users, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I know there's some limitations in all these products, as you mentioned. But the most striking takeaway has been this, that so-called non-lethal systems are either in many cases lethal. So they may be very reliable because they're in a cartridge, but they actually have lethal payloads, and there have been lots and lots of fatalities, or they've been unreliable because air gun-based systems are just inherently involve a lot more maintenance. They can be finicky. So everywhere, you know, users are telling me they're looking for the best of all possible worlds, the reliability of a cartridge-based system combined with a truly non-lethal projectile with various payloads depending on the application or the mission. So that's how the low energy cartridge system was born, from hearing all of that feedback and then coming up with a technology that answers the mail.
And I think that's an incredible, I mean, I think you're changing the game again with a new technology or you know, invention, because I remember being a police officer and Taser was the #1 item on our belt. And I think Taser has, and this is not a knock at all on Taser, this is just my observation as a police officer, but Taser has some incredible flaws. I believe it or not, I never used my Taser one time while I was a police officer. 6.5 years. I was on the SWAT team and I worked in the most dangerous city per capita in the state of Arizona. And I never thought to use my Taser. I think I pulled it out twice and it was completely ineffective on both times. And, you know, I've been looking for a, you know, a non-lethal alternative to Taser, because, and we could just give an example in America how I think that these situations, deadly situations, would have been different if we had low energy cartridge available in law enforcement. I mean, we could just look at the situation in Atlanta where you have the guy, I think his name is Amar Brooks, or I think it's Rashad Brooks. I got to get his name right, but I think most people understand the situation that I'm talking about. He was in the drive-thru, he was drunk. The cops got him out, he was compliant. Ended up going to a use of force situation where he beat up both of the officers and took their tasers. And then as he runs away, he turns around and points the taser and shoots it at the face of one of the officers, and they had to return with deadly force. And I honestly feel like if we were to have another alternative to the lethal force, and people didn't heavily rely on the taser, maybe they would have went hands-on, eliminated him as a threat initially, or if he would have gotten into a situation where he fled, then you can use a non-lethal low energy cartridge in order to, you know, shoot him in the back instead of using a gun, which ultimately, you know, he lost his life. Let me give another scenario, because I think this is important too. There's a young man named Laquan McDonald. Now, he was obviously out of his mind on PCP. However, he did not present himself in the instance that he got shot, I don't know, 16 times or so. He didn't present himself as a deadly threat, but police were in a situation where it was very difficult for them to corral him, make sure he didn't hurt anybody. And they didn't have any other alternatives, because at the distance that he was at, they could not use a taser. Now, mind you, he had a knife in his hand. They couldn't use a taser. They couldn't use their gun without it being an unjustifiable use of force. And at one point, one of the officers whom he got arrested for this, you know, one of the officers decided that he was going to use deadly force because he couldn't, you know, maintain his composure long enough to weigh this situation out. If we had the opportunity to have a low energy cartridge, whether it's in a handgun platform or a rifle platform, they would have been able to address him at a distance with a serious amount of you know, munition that wouldn't kill him.
Yeah, distance is important for sure. Distance is safety.
And that's one thing that the reason why, and I tell my audience this, and I'm being as genuine as I can, one of the reasons why I decided to work with Quest, and obviously I had a chance to meet you and realized that you had developed all of these, you know, brilliant technologies. So one of the reasons is because Quest is cutting edge when it comes to this new munition, or, you know, they call it low energy cartridge, but this is going to change the game in America. And I think it also has a application in the personal home defense, but I think we'll get to that in a minute. Let me stay on track with the questions I wanted to ask you. Let's see. I want you to give us a comparison of the low energy cartridge compared to other technologies that are very similar, right? You know, we have, I think it's called burner technology. Sean Hannity mentioned on his show. I remember watching him do it.
Right.
He mentioned it, and it's sort of an airsoft platform. Can you describe and talk about the benefits of the low energy cartridge versus a platform from burner technology?
Sure. Well, let me first of all describe what the low energy cartridge system is. It is a system, and then I can compare it to burner, which is an interesting case. So the low energy cartridge system, first of all, it fires primarily from a dedicated low cost firing platform. I mean, like Burner does. But this platform accepts only LEC cartridges. So the live ammunition can't be fired accidentally. Number one. There are various designs that will be available to the firing platform, everything from realistic look-alike guns to firing platforms that don't look like guns at all. So this is because we know that different customer groups have different preferences in that regard. So that's the system in a nutshell. The cartridge itself consists of a casing. People know about firearms and know what a casing is, and it has a specialized, actuator or energy source in the base, and the interior of the casing is configured so that it will accept a specially shaped projectile. This is the non-lethal projectile. And it can have a number of what are called different payloads, and that could be anything from a colored marking agent for force-on-force training to an irritant powder like PepperBall. So it depends on what the application of the mission is. And the special configuration of the cartridge casing and the matching projectile is what generates spin to stabilize the projectile in flight for accuracy over distance. And so in a way, the cartridge casing is the barrel, in a sense. So that's a bit of a mental picture. I know it's a bit of a tease because we haven't revealed this to the market yet, except for a very limited demonstration done a little while ago to Quest investors. But in concept, that how it works. And the thing is to solve this problem that customers have identified, then I'll talk about Byrna, how to have the reliability of a cartridge-based system, but with a truly non-lethal projectile, with this variety of payloads for different missions. That's the best of all possible worlds, right? It's what the market's been asking for over and over again, as expressed to me by hundreds of agencies, and that's what LEC delivers, the low-energy cartridge system. So, the Byrna is an interesting case. One of the markets for non-lethal is, as you said, personal defense, right? And personal defense is therefore one of our high priority markets that we're addressing with the low energy cartridge system, because we see so much evidence that more and more people are looking for a more effective and a more reliable product than what's available today. They want reliable personal defense, something they can use at a safe distance. We talked about the importance of distance, how it's a safety factor, but they don't want the risks that come with having a real gun. So when you speak of Byrna, and I say it's an interesting example, it's an interesting example of two things. First of all, this customer demand we've seen so much of for less lethal devices, something more advanced, and also investor appetite for investment in this space. So, Byrna has been able to build up a tremendous market value of its stock, and it also just raised a lot of money. So what does that tell you? That non-lethal is a hot space. Yeah, absolutely, it's a hot space. Investors are chasing it, and consumers are demanding new products. The sheer demand is interesting, given that Byrna is still an air gun system, right? And it's not really dissimilar from the compact PepperBall pistol that we developed and brought to market at PepperBall United Tactical Systems several years ago. So overall, it just tells Quest that this is a big market with demand and room for new products like the low energy cartridge, and it gives us reason to believe that this will be very well received.
I think you made an incredible point that I don't think I even thought about, is the investment opportunity, in the demand. I really do believe that law enforcement, will be invaluable to law enforcement. I mean, there's nothing out there that I can think of that we carry on our gun belt, that we have in our arsenal, that we can apply on multiple levels to keep us safe. And especially now, you don't want to have to kill anybody in law enforcement unless it's absolutely necessary, because you will go to jail if it's politically expedient. So having the alternative weapon system that can put somebody down without killing them is going to be invaluable. Also, I want to speak a little bit about, just to add, and then we'll wrap it up. But the home defense, it's funny that when I was in law enforcement, I had alternatives to lethal systems. Like, I didn't have to kill a person every time I got into a conflict with somebody. Obviously, hand-to-hand combat, you learn that, but there's this gray area of when you are engaged with somebody who can be a threat that may not necessitate deadly force. And in your personal life, you may encounter the exact same situations where you may get into it with somebody who's not armed. And you can't have the justification to say, well, I don't feel like fighting today, so I'm gonna kill this person. You may need some intermediate weapons in there in order to defend yourself. Some people use pepper spray, some people use other alternatives, but I really do think this low energy cartridge could be a solution to that problem, especially when you're dealing with things on your property. You may have somebody who's being belligerent on your property, but they don't have a gun, and you may not feel like fighting them. So you may have an opportunity to use an alternative in the in-between, in the interim, to say, well, I'll use this low energy cartridge on this person and get them off of my property, or, at least to stun them enough that when the police arrive, I'll have some type of tactical advantage versus pulling out a gun, getting into a confrontation with an unarmed person, and then having to use that gun. And I'll say this last factor, and then I'll ask you my next question to wrap it up. But, I think people do fall in this gray area, especially in states where you don't have the right to stand your ground, and some of these different laws that are in, states in the United States of America, different states in our country, people are found in these gray areas. And I've seen people go to prison because they misused or misdiagnosed the situation where they could use lethal force. So I think this is an incredible alternative for people to have a dynamic exposure to tactical weapons in their own personal defense. This is definitely, in my opinion, not to replace, a deadly force situation, but it definitely gives you flexibility to use this instead of having to kill people every time you get into a confrontation, especially if the confrontation is something that you don't want to get involved in. So do you have anything to add to that, or I think we can I can go on to the last question.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we're seeing in the market's telling the story. People are looking for some alternative to deadly force, and also feeling impotent, and they can't do anything, right? They don't want to be a victim. The idea behind the low energy cartridge system is that everybody goes home alive. So for law enforcement, you don't want the headline risk. You don't want to have what they call, a high cost of incident, which can involve a lot of things. So that's the goal, and that's what we're trying to help law enforcement and individuals for personal defense accomplish with this low energy system. It fits, again, as you would know, Brendan, in the force continuum concept, and so where lethal force is not appropriate, and where voice commands or other kinds of interventions are not doing it, you need something in there that gives you the ability to act effectively at a distance. Again, distance is safety, right? And to have the right outcome. And we know LEC is going to do that. We've been very pleased with our own developments, efforts, and prototypes today. And so we're going to now be bringing this to market. As I said, this is a bit of a tease today because we're not showing anything, right? But the plan is that we will, later this year, we'll be in kind of soft launch mode. We'll be creating a website. We'll be happy to reference back to your viewers that they can go to see how this progress is coming. And so that's what we call sort of soft launch. And then at the SHOT Show in January, which some of your viewers may know about, we'll be doing what's called, the hard launch, totally out of the closet, demonstrating the system in action, allowing people to try it. And we know you're going to be there. We look forward to that.
It's going to be amazing. So, I hope my audience, and that was you took the question from me. I think that's the question I was going to ask you, is like, what's next? And for me, I cannot wait for us to get the system in our hands so I can demo the system to my audience so they can see, just my take on it, a realistic perspective of how this is functional in home defense, and also from a person who was in law enforcement. And obviously I was on the SWAT team as well. So I cannot wait to get the system in my hands so I can demo a few of these systems and how it operates. And then also the SHOT Show. I mean, I'm excited. This is my first time going to the SHOT Show. And one of my friends told me how crazy the SHOT Show is, when it comes to fun and all these technologies, and it's like the Disney World for grown men, or people who love, law enforcement and firearms and different things like that. So it's going to be incredible. And I'm also going to do a book signing there as well. So when you guys who follow me, come to the Quest booth, we're going to have access for you to see the weapon, for you probably to handle it, at least to see what it looks like, to see how it feels. And then also I'll be there to represent, as the spokesperson and advisor to Quest. And then also I'll have a book signing where you can get my book, Beating Black and Blue. It'll be all available there. We're going to have an incredible time. I cannot wait. Like, I wish that I can just close my eyes, fast forward to January 2022, and we're going to have a blast. So, David, do you have anything else you'd like to add? I think you did an incredible job explaining. We're going to do more interviews like this because as the system develops and more information comes out, I want to have you back so we can talk more about it.
Well, it's been great to hit those highlights today, Brandon. Thanks very much. And thanks for your involvement and guidance through this. So we look forward to impressing you and impressing your audience.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the man that done the paintball, PepperBall, and Simunition round, I'm sure that the public is going to be elated when this comes to fruition in January. So hold on for me. I'm going to close out my audience, but I want you to stay in the background. I'm gonna pull you out of the screen, but stay there because I like to talk to my guests after it's over, and we'll have a conversation here soon. But ladies and gentlemen, David Luxton, you heard his illustrious career. Some of the things that he's been able to develop has been absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm keeping it 100 with y'all. One of the reasons that I'm a part of Quest, and one of the reasons that I decided to be a spokesperson and do an advisory role is because I think this is going to be one of the biggest launches of a less lethal, a low energy cartridge ever in the history of our country up to this point. So, I mean, I'm excited, and it's a publicly traded company again. So if you want information on that, the link is in the description section. Obviously, when I promote this or when I do advertisement for Quest, the link is always in the description section where you can get more and more information. Once we demo all of the above, those links will be in the description section for you to look at, for you to review. If you want to invest, all of those things are made available to you. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I cannot wait for my next interview with David Luxton, but make sure y'all go on, visit the links there, and thank you for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.